Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rookie Pastors Podcast. My name is Kyle Neiman. I'm your host for this week, and I'm joined by Bryan Colley and Josh Prince. Guys, how are y'all doing this week?
I'm good.
Good.
Ready to get this going.
Well, as we like to do each week that we're recording one of these podcasts, open up with just a little icebreaker question. And so here's my question for you. I don't know. I think all the football going on got this in my head. I feel like most people have one sports story of success. Like your one story that you're like, hey, here's my one heroic moment in sports. So, do either of y'all feel like you had that one heroic moment? Maybe it's maybe it was when you were in little league baseball, football. Maybe you're in high school football, something like that. What's your one heroic sports moment?
Immediately got it. All right. I could have gone pro had my little league baseball coach not chosen his son over me. So
Yes.
I played outfield, which was not smart because I have no depth perception whatsoever. But I played outfield. And we were playing a game, and normally his son pitched. There's definitely the coach favoritism in that. But I got the opportunity to pitch because my dad was the assistant coach, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you try Josh?" So I faced 4 batters, struck out 3, walked 1,
Boom.
and never got to play pitcher again. Like I imagine that I would have been the Max Scherzer of the Rangers, would have delivered him just a couple wins. That's all I needed.
Yeah.
To walk away with the ring and millions of dollars. But yeah, my childhood was ruined. My future Hall of Fame career was ruined after that moment.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
I see a little Dane Dunning look in you, Josh, more than Max Scherzer. So
wear those goggle type glasses.
Absolutely.
Be real serious.
Yeah, he's got that. So mine, I was a baseball player as well, and not very good. And my last season, I was in high school. I did not play for the high school team, but I was playing city league or whatever. And my coach had a rule: do not swing at the first pitch. And I did not like that rule because if it was down the middle, I was going to swing at it. And so one day I said, I'm going to prove him wrong, and I'm going to swing at the first pitch, and I'm going to hit it. And the rest will be history. He will realize that he does not know how to coach and all of that stuff. And so, this guy grooved one right down the middle, sweet spot. Josh Hamilton, Yankee Stadium, batting practice, right down the middle. And I swing with all my might, and I hit it. And I'm like, man, that's great. And then I realized it went about 10 feet down the third baseline. I better run as fast as I can. And I beat it out. And that was my moment of glory.
That's your one heroic moment. Was it?
No,
is that when you decided?
That's not, but none of them are worth telling because there really wasn't any great heroic moment. I did go 2 years in Little League without losing a game. We were undefeated 2 years in a row.
Okay.
He didn't play any of the games, but his team did not ever lose.
I did. I actually played. I have a similar pitching story to you, Josh, but you took it, so I just had to. I unknowingly threw this wicked slider curveball to strike a kid out, and honestly did not know how to throw this wicked slider curveball. It just happened, and
you were chasing it the rest of your life. Could never find that breaking pitch again.
Yeah.
All right, MVP Kyle. I want to hear your story.
I have a lot of stories of me failing. That's for sure. No,
sure.
But you only can learn from failure. That's the great thing about failure.
I growing up, I loved football, and I thought I was going to play football throughout high school, and then, I was a big kid, and then when we got to high school, all the big kids got bigger than me, and so I was, I hit my top height when I was in high school, my current height, 6'1" or whatever. But I played lineman, and all the other guys who were on varsity line were 6'4", 6'5". They're big kids. And so this was freshman year too. I'm looking at this this is not going to happen for me. I get it. But I remember freshman year playing on the freshman team for Fossil Ridge High School. That's where I went to in
Yeah.
Keller, and we were playing our rival, which was Keller High School, and so big game. I'm hyped up. I played both sides of the ball as a center and a defensive lineman. And on defense, we were getting kind of beat. And I felt myself like getting madder and madder as the game went on. And I just lost it in one play. And so perfect swim move, got past the O lineman, and I am sprinting towards the quarterback, strip sack, absolutely pancake the guy. We recover the fumble. It was the best. My dad had to talk to me after the game because apparently I got up and yelled some choice words over the quarterback that I won't repeat on this pastor's podcast. But
I don't think we have a bleep button. So
my dad's like, I've never heard you cuss, son. I'm like, I don't know where that came from. I'm
So
sorry.
it did not end with the Rudy moment of them carrying you off the field.
No. I think we still lost the game.
Son, let's have a talk.
But I felt like a hero in that moment. I mean, I've never hit a person so hard in the football field. I mean, that's one of those ones where they feel it. They're not getting up real quick. And yeah, that was my one hero moment. I made it to freshman football. After that, it was all downhill.
The extent of my sports, heroic life is how good I am at Madden or,
Sure.
MLB The Show.
Notice
the
none of
Rangers
us
were World Series champions well before the Rangers were World Series champions because I was playing them.
Of course.
Yeah.
None of us included destroying teenagers in ping pong, which we all most likely did.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't really call yourself much of a and foosball, absolutely, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. I'm surprised. I didn't know you were both baseball guys. So that's good.
That was my only baseball thing.
I wasn't allowed to play football. My parents were scared that I was going to get hurt. So
yeah,
my mom wouldn't even let me play goalie in soccer. That's how bad it was.
My parents.
These are the things pastors need to know.
Yeah.
All you rookie pastors, we're all unathletic together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, let's jump into our topic for the week. Each week we've collected some topics to discuss as we go through this podcast. And what I want us to talk about this week is our first year in pastoral ministry. Obviously, this being the Rookie Pastors podcast, that first year carries with it a lot of memories of getting things off the ground, a lot of memories of trying to find your footing. And so what I really want us to do is think about those who are coming into ministry for the first time, or even thinking about stepping into pastoral ministry, into that senior leadership role, and what they have to expect from that first year experience, and maybe what advice we have to offer them. And so really want to start out with, what was most surprising to you about your first year in ministry? Bryan, let's start with you. What do you think was the most surprising thing to you about that first year?
I think the thing that was the most surprising to me was there's a weight that comes upon you when you become a senior pastor. I've got lots of years as the second or third or sometimes the ninth chair on staff at a church, and every time you have that, there's always somebody that if you screw up, you can go and mess and like they can rescue. I think, Kyle, a couple of years ago, we were talking one day, and you told me, that's one of the things that church planners don't have, is they don't have that safety net, and why it's good for guys a lot of times to go be on staff for a while before they ascend to that. And so coming into it, I was just like, oh, this is going to be like everything else I've ever done, and when I got here, the day that I was voted in as pastor and began to make preparations for that, like there was just this heaviness that was on me. And it wasn't a bad heaviness, but it was, and the longer I've done it, the more I understand what that heaviness is there's a real holiness to the position of pastor, of shepherd, of overseer, of a local church, of the flock. And I never fully understood that until God said, "Hey, I'm going to let you take this church for a while and let you shepherd this flock." And so, I like to say, I actually used it in my sermon yesterday, the heaviness and the holiness, but there's a real weight that this is going to fall on me. I'm going to be held accountable for how I shepherd these people, how I minister to these people, how I disciple these people. And honestly, it wasn't something I was fully prepared for. It took me a while. It took me like 6 months to even become comfortable with the idea that I was the pastor. And so it was that was probably the most surprising. Preaching wasn't a bit, getting in that rhythm was a little bit, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. Doing administrative stuff, I'd done that before, but that weight of it carries more here in this role.
That's good. Josh, what about you? What was most surprising to you about that first year in pastoral ministry?
So I would say it sounds kind of weird, but how ready and not ready I was. So there were a lot of things I was ready for. I mean, I was excited to go into the pastorate. I don't jokingly say it. I think I knew that I was supposed to be the pastor of First Baptist Cedar Hill more than I've known just about anything in my life. I was even not sure that Jessica would ever say yes to me in marriage, but I knew that I was supposed to be the pastor here. Now, I wasn't sure they were going to say yes to me either, but
Sure.
I was ready. I was eager. I recognized that there was a lot of very intentional things that God had allowed me to go through to prepare me to be here. And really, even in just the most unique situation that Cedar Hill itself was in, like I didn't have all this revitalizing preparation going into this place. I was naive in a lot of ways, which is how the side of things where I wasn't ready. But I was definitely ready. I was excited to be here. And I think I was really surprised by how eager I was to jump in and get things going. The not ready side, of course, is, there's just things that you're going to fail at. There's going to be things that you mess up, you misstep. And there's this redeeming grace in failure. If you're humble enough and willing enough to learn, we've walked through that, just a kind of a public failure, not a sin issue, but just something we tried to introduce as a church that didn't pass. And even that failure gave me this opportunity to extend this grace and to show leadership to the church and show my commitment to them. So, yeah, I don't think you'll ever be fully ready for it, but you're not ready for it. So just lean into the fact that if you have confidence that God's called you to it, if you have confidence that you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be, and it's a constant roller coaster, but at the same time, it's still an exciting ride. So have fun with it.
That's a really good point. Like you're never going to be ready, and if you think you are, you got something else to check. You probably have to check some of that pride and whatnot. When I was interviewing for this position here, one of the individuals, one of the deacons who was on the pastoral search committee, during the interview asked me, he said, "I've asked this of many of the pastors who've come through this church, and I want to ask you," he says, "are you the guy?" And I'm like, man, I really like the questions about like, what would I do? Who am I? Like, you're asking me this question that, like, I hope I am. I see how I could be. But you're asking me to speak, about fate or something here. And, but when he asked me that, there was this readiness. And I was like, I can confidently say that I am ready to be the pastor here. It doesn't mean I am perfectly prepared or anything like that. Doesn't mean I know what's coming, but I'm ready to step into this. And I think that's an important thing that you bring up there. I found it really surprising for me personally that the act of preaching didn't have to be this seminary level effort, that the people who are ready to receive the word are not expecting me to be like this precise exegeting of scripture, like I just, wrote a book. I didn't have to be Dr. Slayton or anything like that. No, but what I just found out was like, what surprised me is the simplicity in preaching is what people desired. that they just wanted to be encouraged, to be drawn towards the word. And sometimes I felt like you were saying, Bryan, just the weight of that seat was causing me to put more on my shoulders than was necessary. I just need to be
Mhm.
faithful in bringing the word. And so that was one of the things that surprised me, just kind of coming right out of the gate. So on the note of that first year, what were some of the things that went really well for you? The biggest success that you had in that first year, and why do you think that was successful?
Yeah, for us, there were a lot of good things here. There were a lot of things that needed to be encouraged and corrected. And so before we came, my wife had this idea. She said, I want us to have as many people from the church into our home as possible. We kept using the word, we want to share a meal with you. And somebody like kind of made fun of us that we kept using that terminology, but we did. Over a meal, we wanted to get to know people. And we felt like it would kind of bring down this fear, this animosity, that there would be this approachability to the pastor, that they would see us as these people who really do care about them. And so that's why we decided, as many of them will actually even come to in our home. Now, we moved here during COVID, so people were still terrified of their shadow at that point. But
Sure.
we
Yeah.
had probably 80% of the church that said yes to that over that year period. And at some point, Jess tallied like how many people we had, and it was an incredible number. We probably should have tallied how much money we spent on it for a better tax write-off, but it was great. And even people, the people who said no, or the people who didn't really like me for whatever reason, I didn't wear a suit or I didn't preach from King James. But there were even some people who kind of didn't know what to think about me, didn't know if they could trust me as their pastor. And obviously, that's that first year. So they're working through that anyways. But they come into our home and we made such great connections. We had an older couple come into our home, and they just opened up about some of their concerns of the church. It was great because we got to speak into, this is why we want to change that. And they had never thought like some of these changes, how as simple as they are, will bring great encouragement to that. We did have one couple that turned us down, a senior adult couple. But then a couple of months later, the wife reached out and said, we actually want you to come into our home, which always concerns me. But we did. And she and I actually, we had a really fruitful conversation about hymns, because that was, one of the things that she was concerned about. It was great because it was casual. It wasn't in my office. It wasn't, in the lobby right after a Sunday morning. It was a really intentional conversation that she and I got to have in the comfort of her home, sitting around her dining room table. So those are a huge win for us. Great connections. And I think it bought us a lot of grace and encouragement,
Yeah.
from the very get-go with those people.
I think that, I mean, you're mentioning something that's so essential in that first year is, I mean, making sure people realize that your door is open to them is so
Mhm.
important. I was surprised at how many people, their natural uh, vibe towards the pastor position is that door is closed. They are not approachable. And
Yeah.
I mean, how many people I surprised by being like, yeah, I'll sit down and have a conversation with you. Yeah, come on, let's talk about this thing that you think is a small issue. I'm like, oh, let's talk about the small issues. Let's talk about the big issues. Not a
Yeah.
problem. So I think
I joked
that's
about it
awesome.
from the stage yesterday. Like, it's still a thing that some people think like, oh, I can't bother you. Like, no,
Sure.
like, you're the reason I'm here. Your
Yeah.
bothering me is why I'm here. Like, that's why I'm
Right.
supposed to be your pastor.
Well, and that first year, I tried to sit in on some of our Sunday school groups, and I had one of our Sunday school leaders come up to me and be like, "That was really hard," and I'm like, "Why?" And it's like, just speaking with you in there. I'm like, I feel like I'm the least intimidating person in the world. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not wearing like a big suit. I'm not in there being like, excuse me, that wasn't theologically correct. I'm just trying to be around people. But there was this intimidation. People talked less and engaged less. And so what I found out is that, I have to be as present and give off this information that they can come and chat with me whenever they want, and I want to engage with them as well. Bryan, for you,
Yeah.
what was one of the biggest successes in your first year in pastoral ministry?
Opening up the fire hydrant and letting it just hit me in the face. So when we when we moved here, I've grown up in everywhere I've ever lived has been a suburb of a metropolitan area, and now I'm in the middle of nowhere, hill country, Texas. Our community has 2,500 people in it. The church I grew up in had more people than our community in, and so there was a big culture shock. But I knew moving to a small town, I wanted to get involved in the community in a way I've never been able to do before. Little did I know how much that means. Um, but but I didn't know how to do that. My wife is a teacher. She was still finishing her contract on the other side of Austin, so it was just me and my two girls. And during the week and on weekends, she was here, and we were trying to spend as much time as we could with her, and trying to get her a job on this part of the state and everything. And I was like, how am I going to find time to even begin to do that? What to do that? And God has a plan, and God has a sense of humor. And 2 weeks after I got here, he brought the greatest ice storm of 2021 ever, and we decided, with so many of our people that live outside of town, ranchers, farmers, whatever, what the not, they weren't going to come in, and so we just said, let's video. We'll live stream that morning only, so people aren't at risk. And that was kind of weird the second week I was here to do that. And then, but we said, people are going to lose power. Our city has no natural gas lines. Everybody is either all electric or on propane. And so we knew that people were going to not be prepared. They're going to run out of propane. Water lines are going to freeze up, all of that stuff. And so we said, we'll just open up our fellowship hall Sunday afternoon, not knowing how bad it was going to get. Open up our fellowship hall, and become a warming center. We had some food in a pantry. The church had filled our pantry when we moved into our house. And so we just loaded up a bunch of that stuff and brought it to the church. And we just were going to have food for people that just needed a place to be. And it came in quicker than we thought. And what happened was people weren't going to be able to get out. Our sheriff's and EMS dispatch office called us and said, hey, we saw that y'all are offering meals. Can y'all bring some down to us? And we said, sure. So we took 3 meals down there. And then all of a sudden, over the next 3 days, we ended up delivering 200 meals to the entire community, which was a huge win. I think that was a corporate win, but a personal win for me to connect with the community. I got to find out where people lived, that kind of stuff. I think another success that I don't know if I would do this in another place, or if I would encourage anybody else to do this, but it really helped me. I came in and there was already a preaching team in place. And so I preached for 2 weeks, and then I took 2 weeks off of preaching and let those guys preach. I wanted to set a culture that I don't have to be the only voice that's on the stage, but I needed those 2 weeks to kind of get a lay of the land of everything else.
Sure, yeah.
And so that was a big thing for me. So.
Yeah, I had a weird thing in my first year that was kind of uncommon. When they were interviewing me, they hadn't chosen me. They still had other candidates. They asked me to come in and speak, not in view of a call. They said, our interim's out for a week. Would you mind coming in? And so that was kind of a weird thing, because it's like, this isn't really an audition, but everybody knows I'm a candidate. But I really appreciated that, because it gave this opportunity for them to hear me. But also, what I don't like about that is there was this emphasis right from the beginning of, we need you to be the guy every week. And I wish I had found a way in those first few weeks, few months, to be like, you know what, let's put some other people speaking in there. Because now I'm trying to backtrack and be like, okay, It's
Yeah.
not just my voice. It's not just me on stage. And it's tough to do. It's tough to implement later on.
Yeah, and I've actually, just for various reasons, I've preached too much over the past year or so, and now I'm worried that if I don't begin that again, that we're going to lose that culture. And so, because I've made it a point to allow others to preach while I'm there, which was foreign for people. They were like, "Wait, you're here. You're supposed to preach," and I'm like, "Not today." And
Yeah.
so it's been an interesting thing. So,
Well, as good as we all are at being pastors, apparently, and all the successes we had in that first year, I know, I don't know about you guys, but I know I had plenty of moments that were not as golden. Not, I didn't feel like I was doing that great. So let's talk about those. Let's be honest about our failures in that first year. So what are some things that were just kind of those fall flat on your face moments? And then but to bring that silver lining into it, how did God redeem that situation, or how did God grow you in that situation? Josh, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I would say kind of the optimism I had. Not to say we should be pessimistic, but I was leaning on leadership that was very excited, that was very forward thinking, that was ready to implement change and all kinds of stuff. And they were vocal people. They were longtime members of the church. Um, Many of them served on different ministry or committees and ministries and stuff like that. So I leaned into their optimism a little too much. I tried to push some things forward that the church was not ready for. They were good things, but the church wasn't ready for them. And I felt like, you know, every single one of us as pastors knows you're not supposed to rush things. We know that like that first year, a lot of times shouldn't make major changes. And sometimes you have to. Like sometimes it's not an option. It
Right.
was an option here. Like we didn't have to rush anything. But yet there's still such a temptation because you find something that you think is just so important, especially if it's biblical, like if it's some polity structure, which was our thing with eldership. Like you think these are great things, the church would thrive under this. We set this health up now, it's going to lead us into the future. And it was just that it was leaning on that optimism of people that it didn't help us, and it hurt us for a little bit. It wounded the church for a little while as well. It wounded people who didn't felt like they were heard or agreed upon. And so that definitely caused an issue. And the other thing is I was desperate for anything, any glimmer of hope. I just leached onto it way too much. So somebody new would come into the church. I tried not to be awkward, but like, we'd try and get coffee with them as soon as possible. We try
Right.
and see like, where do you want to serve? Do you understand what church revitalization is? Like we
Right.
would just get so excited about it and almost smother them. And so we lost some of those people probably because we were too excited. We lost some of those people too, just because we were in the beginning stages of something that we didn't really need to attach a ton of new people to, because it was a process that we had to go through ourselves.
Sure.
But yeah, that optimism is great, but you got to be careful with how far you lean into it, how much you trust it, and don't be awkward. Well, some people are just awkward anyways. So be you, but not too you if you're too awkward.
So I mean the
Great
optimism,
wisdom.
yeah, optimism almost serves to keep you from quitting. To kind of provide that hope that, okay, we're going to keep moving forward. But yeah, when the optimism has you casting out further than you really should be reaching, that can be pretty painful sometimes when it snaps back at you. Brian?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my personal things is I'm it's very easy for me to see the other side of the hill, to see the vision and to see what it could become, and to understand that people aren't that quick as I am, and to be patient in that, but also to understand that there's a lot of people that just really don't care about that. And so, like, I'm like, and they're like, great, they just don't care to know about those things. So, for me, my biggest failure probably that first year, and it's something I'm still struggling with. especially in a congregational polity setting, is how much decision making um, do I do and feel comfortable doing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I'm getting better at it, but more like when do I lean on a committee, or when do I lean on this?
Yeah.
And there are some times, and there's a couple specific examples early on when I was still wrestling with this whole concept of now I'm the pastor, and how do I work with this group of people? How do I work with this? And there were some decisions about who would be in leadership to be made, and I deferred to other people when I had reservations, rather than taking those reservations and saying, "Hey, they're not personality. They're like, these are some really serious, like I'm feeling some spiritual reservations here, and as the pastor, I think we should slow down."
Hmm.
And I didn't do that, and that's become a hindrance for us. And so, like Josh said, it's great to remember that first year. And I think this is something, you asked that, how has God redeemed that? And um, uh, in that moment, there was two particular leadership things that I was worried about. One has turned out to be probably one of the best things for this church, and one didn't. But it's okay. And I think people are going to respect you in those early days to say, "Hey, let's slow down a little bit.
Hmm.
Let's wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's not." And I think that's God maturing you, and helping you uh, become the pastor of this church, because people won't say, "Well, he's just trying to, run us over with his ideas, and run us over with what he thinks we should do." Hey, he's actually willing to stop and say, "Let's analyze this from different directions." And I wish I'd done that differently, but we learn from our mistakes. We learn from our failures, just as much, if not more, than we do from our successes. And I just wish that I wish I'd felt comfortable enough in my pastor skin, to be able to say, "Hey, you've hired me to be the spiritual shepherd of this church. Let me do this right now,
Yeah.
and put a pause on this." So
Yeah, it's a tough balance. Like when you take those big steps and not I was about to say assert your dominance. That's not what I mean, but really step into that role. I mean, you're supposed to lead this church forward
yeah.
and into what you believe God has really laid on your heart. So when do you do that? And even when you know it's going to step on toes, and
hmm
then when do you hold back? And that first year, you have to figure out that balance.
and you've got to learn your people, because
And so that's what I was going to say. Like,
yeah,
you have to talk to people
yeah,
because you
yeah,
don't know what you don't know, right?
right.
And one of the things for me was uh, I discovered landmines that our church had. Those we talk about it in. We had talked about in Pave about these golden calves that a church has. We I discovered those in the worst way possible.
hmm
I stepped right into it, and it causes massive conflict and problem. If I had talked to more people, and like you said, Brian, if I slowed down,
Yeah.
that would have gone a long way into helping things. I still need, even when you were saying that, I was still going, man, there's some things going on right now. I probably should slow down a little bit here or there. It's something
And
you
it's
still have to figure out.
it's not just corporate landmines. There are personal landmines
Oh,
that people
absolutely. Yeah,
carry.
that's good.
And I remember there was a moment, couple, maybe my first year here, and I hate to say this, but I was trying to solve a problem by doing something else, by pushing someone to something else, if that makes sense. I was trying to, or probably not doing it the right way, but I was thinking about a new type of ministry or something, and I had gone and talked to somebody about it who was in some significant leadership roles, that I thought they would be really good at this ministry. And what I didn't realize, no, I would have never known this. Nobody had ever told me this or anything. that several years prior, somebody that was causing division in the church had approached them about this exact same ministry
Oh,
to basically split the
oh
church.
goodness.
And I didn't know that.
Hmm.
And down the road, I was talking to somebody, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like that is a huge red flag for them." And I'm like, "You could have told me that when I walked in, like." And because we're gonna talk about in episode 3, we're gonna talk about trust capital and leadership capital and banking that and storing that up. I expended a lot of trust capital that I didn't have
Hmm.
in asking, "Hey, have you ever considered to do this?" Because I didn't know that personal landmine sitting
Sure.
there. And I think on the other side of that is people will tell you stuff. You're talking about not wanting to step on toes. Like people will say, "Hey, we love that you're bold in your sermons and you're bold in what you do. Go further." And I'm like, you don't know what that means,
Yeah.
because when you say that, that means I now have the freedom to offend you and to step on your toes.
Yeah, well, that goes
And
back to what Josh you were saying. I mean, just when people are enthusiastic about what you're doing, sometimes that kind of moves you to take those steps before you've really considered all of the
yeah,
avenues and the issues there.
Well, in that first year, you're coming in and you're just looking for the spirit induced moment where okay, things are starting to click. And so, but even though we know we shouldn't change, even though we know we shouldn't get too excited, it will still tempt every single one of us. Like we see that little glimmer of light that we
So
feel like,
true.
okay, I've got to charge for it now because I'm just going to lose momentum. And the reality is, no, you just keep on trekking, keep on going the pace, maybe speed up, maybe slow down. Like there's going to be that variance, but just keep on heading there. Don't force yourself there because you're going to make those missteps. And we need to make mistakes. We are going to make mistakes. The great wisdom of Master Bruce's what's his name?
Ra's al
Batman's
Ghul.
oh,
no. Is it
Sal showing his
well?
nerd.
What can it Alfred? Yeah, he's like
Alfred.
Master
I
Bruce.
was.
Why do we
I thought you
fall
were
so we can
trying
get
to
back
say
up
his
again?
villain. So there you go. I
No, I
am a
couldn't.
nerd.
Yeah,
Thank you,
so
Brian.
yeah, sorry, I had the opportunity there, and I totally ruined it. But I was getting to like, why do we fall so we can get back up again? I think that
Ah, there we go.
the Lord
Yeah.
does allow failure, and that's okay. Like we shouldn't take it so personal. We should learn from it.
But I think when you do have those moments, especially, I mean, not just especially in your first year, but at all times, but it really, the first year, like I said earlier, like it's like opening up a fire hydrant and just drinking straight from it. And you think the old cartoons, and they do that, and it knocks them, across the city. Uh, in those moments, that a lot of times is God saying, "Stop and remember to rely on me."
Hmm.
Remember to seek me and to listen to my counsel and my guidance, because I'm preparing you. Even though I've started you, like I started a series on Joshua yesterday, and one of the things that's just really hitting me was even as he called Joshua to lead the people into Canaan, he didn't lead them right off the bat. He was still preparing him for a little while to then go. And even though you're brought here at the time that God wants you to be at your church, he's still going to prepare you for what's next. And you've just got to continue to stop and rely on him and listen to him. Because if you don't, you're gonna make some big mistakes that a lot harder to get out of.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So looking back at that first year, sitting in your new pastor's office, thinking about what am I going to do, and you look at that whole year, what would you have done differently, knowing what you know now? What are some things that you would have done different?
I would have slowed down and spent more time with people. I spent time with a certain set of people, and I tried to. We didn't do what Josh did, as far as getting people in their home on an individual basis. We did a crazy thing that was old school pastor thing, and we opened our house up for a Christmas open house, and that was nuts.
Did you give them
But
your Christmas wish list before they came over?
no, I did not.
Man, I should
But
have sent
we
them your
had,
Amazon cart.
yeah, for all of the work that we put into that, we really didn't get a huge, like most people didn't come. I'm like, well, nobody loves us. They didn't come.
Oh,
Um,
God.
but I spent a lot of time with top level, or what I considered to be top level people in the church,
Hmm.
and didn't spend enough time with everybody in the church, as I should have or could have. And you know, and I believe that that hinders you down the road. You don't have you don't have the people, you don't have the knowledge of your people to know where they're at, but also to identify people that can help you in certain areas. You just relied on a certain set, and then you burned them out. And um, and so like I said, I would have slowed down. I would have, you know, bring a cliche in. I would have smelt the roses and enjoyed the people around me a whole lot more. But it was just so rapid fire that first year, and and but there's a pressure in that first year that they don't want you to do a lot, but they want you to do a lot,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so you kind of have to justify why you're there in your mind. Um, but in actuality, if you're wanting to this to be long term, you know, you've got to slow down and really shepherd those people, and get them to, you know, you begin to smell like them, smell like sheep. There's a book I read called Smell Like Sheep, that you get in there with them, and and it's dirty and it's messy, but you're building that relationship and you're becoming their pastor.
Yeah, I think that
I'm gonna
that's
one
one of the
up. Oh,
key.
sorry.
Oh, it's just one of the key things. Like, be a pastor. Like,
Yeah.
remember that key role. Josh, you were saying.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm gonna one up Brian. So I would have said I would have spent more time with the Lord. So take that, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah. Way
I
to
would
way
have
to Jesus
I would
I
have
treat me
spent
spent
right
enough
there.
time with people. I wanted to spend
yeah
more time with the Lord.
yeah. I was smelling like the sheep. I needed to smell like Jesus. No,
Boom.
I would have definitely spent more time in prayer. It's just like I think we know that, like we say that. That's a good thing to say. I would have spent more time in the Bible and in prayer, but I think that where I'm at right now, year 4, the Lord is really gravitating me towards the understanding of just how vital prayer is on an individual basis as the pastor, but also corporately. We need to be devoted to prayer. Um, and I would have just spent more time praying for our people, praying, for our deacons, praying for our staff, praying for the vision, the mission, whatever it might be. There's a lot more intentionality. I've started to do this now, where any day possibly, I'm just spending that first hour in the work of just praying. I've started journaling those prayers too, to think more, uh, just put a more focus on how I can be praying for individuals, whether it be my staff or our deacons or ministries, whatever it might be. And I wish I would have gotten that going from the very get go, to just focus on how much I really do need the Lord and how much we as a church need the Lord as well.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, Josh, because I'm coming up on year 4, and I really feel like that's the biggest thing that God is teaching me pastorally right now as well. Is,
Hmm.
you know, like, and then once again, there's a fine line of locking yourself in your office more than anything, um, but you do have to pour over your people, the congregation, you know, everything, your leadership, everything in prayer, and just give it to the
Mhm.
Lord. And you know, too often when things are going good, you forget that a lot. But
Yep.
make that consistent.
See, for me, the thing that looking back, I should have asked for help so much sooner from people within the church and people that I network with. Like, um, I don't think it was a pride thing. I think it was more like I just don't even know who to ask for help because
Yeah.
one of the
Where to
things,
start?
yeah, because one of the things we didn't even touch on is kind of surprised me is how lonely it is being the lead pastor. You all of a sudden go from having this staff camaraderie when you're on staff at other churches, or you have this community if you're at seminary or anything like that, to you're the guy. And so many people naturally just kind of go a little standoffish with that,
Mhm.
no matter how personable you are. And so because of that, I didn't even know where to ask, and what was right to ask. And now I'm trying to rework how we engage with our deacons and how I ask help from them, and encourage them to be part of this work, how I engage with the staff, how I engage with other folks in the community, and ask for help. PAVE with Texas Baptist was a big part of this, of just like, I didn't know what to do. And that gave me a lot of, okay, here are some steps of how you start working towards church growth. But I didn't have any of that, and I'm thankful for people reaching out to me and offering that help. But that's why what I would do that first year is not be afraid to ask help until you find people who can offer it. There's nothing wrong in that, and so I think I would have grown a lot more in that first year.
It's so hard though to want to ask for help right off the bat because they've hired you
Right,
to do the
right,
job.
yeah.
And and you spend the whole interview process selling yourself about how great you are, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I need help because I don't know what I'm
But
doing.
it goes back to what you said, Bryan, that those first couple weeks you said, you know what, I'm going to give the pulpit over to somebody else, and we're gonna let somebody else preach. Like, create a culture
Yeah,
that is not about this one guy at the top. Create a culture of people shoulder to shoulder working together for the sake of the kingdom of God, and the sake of this church and its growth and its health. And a lot of those other things will kind of come into place. The personability, realizing that it's not about king pastor, on their
hmm,
throne. Because I think a lot of churches get in a lot of trouble because of that.
yeah,
I've tried, you know, I've tried to play that down. Like when we replaced the church sign that had the old pastor's name on it, everybody's like, "You got to put your name up there." And I said, "No, we're going to replace it with a new logo, and it's going to have our
yeah.
church's name, because it's not about me. It's not
Yes,
about
thank
the
you.
pastor."
I did not put my name on there, and I've had several people mad at me
But
in the community about
But
that.
you know what? What I realized was, what came with that for our people was there's this fear that I was going to leave.
Yeah,
Like my name was written up there in chalk now, and
yeah,
I was like, that's not what it's about. I'm trying to make the church the focus and not me.
mhm,
And when you explain that, it makes a lot of sense, and people come around to it. But yeah, that's what I wish I had done in that first year, was ask for help to help create a culture of of not being the one pinnacle staff member.
yeah.
Obviously, there are points where you have to take the big step and lead, but you know, for it to always be the buck stops here, it's just not how it was meant to be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Really enjoy chatting with you guys. We lost Josh in the stream here, but so thankful for Josh and his insight. Bryan, I'm thankful for you and your insight on this. And do you have anything else you want to share before we hop off here?
Yeah, patience is key.
Hmm.
Just be patient. I know you have ideas. I know you've got thoughts of things you want to accomplish. Let them come in due time. I hate the question during the interview process. What is your vision for this place? You don't know the vision for the place until you know the place
Right,
and you know the people.
right.
And so just be patient, establish relationships, build on those, establish culture, and know that all of that takes a very, very long time to do. Our goal is to be. I know my goal here at my church, and I know these guys well enough to know that they feel the same way. Um, is to be here a while. We don't just want to, like for me, I want to put roots down here and be here. And if I don't make sure I'm constantly gauging how if I'm moving at an appropriate pace, then I won't be, because I'll burn out, or I'll, lead the church, get too far ahead of the church, and we'll become distant, and it won't be good. So just be patient. So, Josh, if you were on one of those mega church staffs, you wouldn't have internet problems. Thus is the life of revitalization.
I still think it's humorous that the guy out in rural Texas has the better internet stream than the rest of us. But
So,
well, Josh, we're signing off. Is there anything else you'd like to add as we wrap this up?
Invest in Wi-Fi boosters, and
Yes,
yeah, that's the greatest wisdom I can give to the end of this Wi-Fi.
That's
toward the end of this
perfect.
podcast.
That's perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you again, guys, for your insight on this topic. Thankful for all this. I felt challenged by that, so I hope anyone who's listening would feel challenged and be a part of the conversation. Feel free to drop a comment on this wherever you are listening to, watching this. Make sure you follow us on social media. It's Rookie Pastors Pod. Share this, like, subscribe, leave a review. All that helps us get this information, this conversation out to more and more pastors, because we're just trying to have a casual conversation of just pastors talking about real ministry. And so thank you for being a part of this. Hope you have a wonderful week. We hope to see you next time.